Carl, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well. It's good to be with you.
Fantastic. Listen, before we dive into your work, let's talk a little bit about how come you speak so many languages and where does the lovely surname Honoré come from?
Well, my father's from Mauritius, which is a French-speaking island down off the coast of South Africa, so I come by French that way. But I also speak and do talks and so on in Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian at a stretch because I'm a foreign correspondent, right? I've worked for years covering Latin America and Europe for publications like The Economist, Time Magazine, and so on. So I picked up the languages along the way, and I love words, and I love words in different languages, and I love moving across different cultures and sharing the same idea with different language.
Fantastic. I won't test your Italian today, all right, because we might lose our listener. So, so tell me, where did the idea of slow, the concept, where did that come from?
Well, of course, the slow food movement was really the first group to reclaim the word slow and to say slow is not a dirty word. But what I did with my book, In Praise of Slow, is to take that concept, refine it, and widen it out and say that we could apply this idea of slowing down to every single aspect of our lives. And it's really important to underline right from the start that when people talk about slow with a capital S, the slow movement or the slow revolution, it is not about doing everything really slowly. That would be ludicrous, right? I'm not an extremist or a fundamentalist of slowness. I love speed. I love going fast, and faster is often better. We all know that. But this slow culture quake is about doing things at the right speed. It's about knowing that there are times to be fast, but there are also times to slow things down, right? The relearning the lost art of shifting gears, being mindful, being present, doing one thing at a time, doing ultimately everything as well as possible instead of as fast as possible. That is the essence of slow. And you realize that once you get your head around that, once you get that slow chip and slot it in, you realize that it can really revolutionize every single thing you do, which is why there are slow movements in every single aspect of our lives now, from the working world to parenting to sex to design, travel, you name it. People are bringing the filter of slow to the party and saying, how can I do this thing better and enjoy it more by slowing down just a little bit, by finding the right speed for this moment.
So you mentioned parenting, and that's an interesting one. Is this something that you've applied to your family life?
Very much so. I, like a lot of parents, got caught up in that headlong dash of raising children. And I think for a lot of kids nowadays, childhood has become a race to perfection. But increasingly, we're realizing that is folly. That's wide of the mark, because kids need to slow down. That's how they develop. It's how they learn how to think and use their imagination and work out who they are, rather than what everybody else wants them to be. So a big part of my work is in education. It's in parenting. So I've just come back from a speaking tour of Silicon Valley, for instance, where I was talking to some of the most hard-driving, ambitious parents on the planet. And what they are desperately trying to do now is find ways to slow their families down, to slow their children down, to give them the power, the wisdom, and the joy of reconnecting with their inner tortoise. So it's all over the world now, this idea that slower can be better. And for many people, it does start in the family. It starts in the home. It starts very small, very intimate, but very human.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, we're all about business, and and that's our focus. So I think it's great to start in the family. But how do we bring the benefits of slow to work? So if I want to unleash my inner tortoise, how do I convince my boss that's okay to do?
I think because we live in a world that is so enthralled to speed, especially the workplace, which is marinated in the idea that faster is always better, right? It's even woven into workplace vernacular. We talk about you snooze, you lose, the early bird gets the worm, lunch is for wimps. It's all about go faster, do more. But increasingly, the message coming from everybody in the working world who knows anything about how people operate, human beings operate as employees, the message is coming loud and clear that people need to slow down. They'll be better employees. It's better for the bottom line. In fact, The Economist magazine did a survey very recently looking at the pace of the modern workplace and came to a very clear, very concise, and very economist-style conclusion. The final paragraph of that survey was, forget frantic acceleration. Mastering the clock of business is about choosing when to be fast and when to be slow, right? And there it is, a perfect summation. That's the slow philosophy in a nutshell. And that's The Economist magazine. It's not Buddhist Monthly. It's not Acupuncture Weekly, right? It's the in-house Bible of some of the most go-getting, entrepreneurial and productive people on the planet, and they too are coming to the same conclusion that slower is often better. So if you find yourself in a workplace where the boss is all about more, faster, faster, of course, you can't change that overnight. You have to slow that situation down slowly, if you like. You've got to do it with baby steps. So you maybe start by organizing an event or sharing information about companies in the same sector or other sectors who are slowing down their staff, who are slowing down judiciously in clever strategic moments in order to perform better. Give examples, real world examples, and then encourage your boss or your employees or your colleagues to do little pilot projects, little experiments where they test slowness in your context. So you might, for instance, have 1 week where everybody leaves the office when their work is done, instead of hanging around, putting in FaceTime, trying to look busy when they're actually not really getting anything done. And then at the end of the week, get everyone together, sit around the table and talk about what it felt like. Did it work? Did we produce better this week because we weren't going fast all the time? We actually allowed ourselves to slow down when the work was done. Could we tweak this for the next week? How would it fit in our context? And just give people a real taste of how slow can unleash creativity, productivity, connection, team building, leadership, all the good stuff that we want in the workplace. How slowing down wisely can get more of that for us. Give people a flavor by letting them run little trial and error projects and work out how to put it into practice in their context, in your context.
Okay, I'm going to get some free consultancy here now from you, because I have a tendency to shoot from the hip and go for easy fixes. If I've got a problem and there's an easy solution staring me in the face, I'm going to go for that. So that's obviously a quick reaction. How can I apply slow? And should I? I mean, if there's an easy, quick fix, is that not the way to go?
Well, my third book is called The Slow Fix, which probably gives you an idea of how I'm going to answer that question. Now, obviously, sometimes a quick fix, shooting from the hip, is exactly what you need in life, in the workplace. If you're sitting across from somebody at a dinner and they start choking, you don't bust out the Reiki or, you do the Heimlich maneuver. You go for the quick fix, right? But in so many situations in the workplace, the quick fix is just the wrong answer. It's putting a plaster on a deep wound. It's skating over the surface when you want to get down to the heart of the matter. So your question is, how do you get over that instinct to go for the quick fix? I think one solution I always suggest to people is to apply what's called the 2-minute rule. They've shown that when confronted with a difficult decision in the workplace, if we take just 2 minutes to think about it, take a few deep breaths, just contemplate, look at the problem from different angles, rotate it, sit with it for just 2 minutes, right? 120 seconds. That changes the way the brain is operating. We start to short circuit some of those brain mechanisms that push us towards low-hanging fruit, easy solutions, quick fixes that aren't going to work. And we start looking beyond them and coming up with more complex, maybe better solutions for the longer term. And that's quite a straightforward hack. It's a 2-minute investment of your time. It's not 2 days. It's not 2 hours. It's just 2 minutes. And I think that's a very useful metaphor when we think about how slow can be brought into a fast workplace, that you can slow down a little and get a big payoff. You don't have to turn into the Dalai Lama and meditate for 4 hours. You can sometimes just slow down for a few seconds or a couple of minutes, and it can make a big, deep, and palpable difference to the quality of your decision-making, of your strategic thinking, of the connections you make with the people around you. And you don't have to slow down in a massive way. Sometimes just a little slow goes a long way.
No, brilliant. I like that. I'm going to try that. Okay, super. And could we use technology to help us, do you think?
Absolutely. I'm not in any way a Luddite. I think the gadgets are great. They're wonderful. And we can use them to help us slow down. You could be sitting stuck on a train or a bus or in traffic. And in the old days, you couldn't really do much, right? But now you've got a phone with you. You might be able to get a bit of work done that you couldn't have done before. The trouble is, what do we do with the time we've saved there? Well, rather than using that time to slow down, to read a bedtime story to our children in an unhurried manner, or have a nice meal with our partner, or go for a walk, rather than use that time for those slow pursuits, we cram it with more stuff, more activity. And I think it's really about, again, with the gadgets, it's about finding that balance, knowing when to be off when to be on. Like the economist was saying, when to be fast, when to be slow. When it comes to technology, it's when to be off and when to be on. And I've just come back from a speaking tour of Silicon Valley, and these are people who are on the bleeding edge of this technology, and increasingly they're coming to the same conclusion that the technology is wonderful, but we've become enslaved to it now, and we need to hammer out a new and healthier and more productive relationship with our screens and gadgets in order to get the most out of them. So there are now in Silicon Valley, you've people all about carving out moments to switch off, choosing when to send an email or a message and when to get up from their desk, walk across the office, spend 5 or 10 minutes sorting out a problem face to face with another human being, and then going back to your desk, job done. And how often you find yourself when you take that slower road, getting not only better results, but sometimes more quickly. This is what I think of as the delicious paradox of slow. That take that example, the person sorting out a problem face to face in the office. The person who's done that, compare them to the person who spent the whole afternoon playing email ping pong, firing messages back and forth, CCCing, BCCing everybody in the office, distracting people, and not really sorting out anything at all. When in fact, if you just took the slow road, the slow approach, spoke to somebody face to face, in a few minutes you can sort the problem out. And I think that's another way of thinking about how slow slots into a fast workplace, is that there are times, certain pressure points, when fast is just not going to do the job. You need to slow down to make the connection, to make the understanding, to make the creative leap. And when you do that, you actually save time in the long term. That slowing down is not a waste of time. It's actually an investment that pays off handsomely if you allow it to unfold, unfurl, and flourish on its own terms and its own pace. If you don't try and rush the slow, then it will pay off beautifully in the medium and longer term.
Fantastic. I love that. It's a different way of looking at things and thinking, and I love that more human aspect. And I suppose on the human thing and technology thing, we've got this fear nowadays that AI is going to come in and change the way we live and we work. And for some people, they may well see that as a real negative. But you think there's a competitive advantage for slow in that battle. How does that work?
Well, I do. I think that it's all about comparative advantage. That what machines do very well, we're never going to match them on the fast, the calculations, all that sort of stuff. Where machines fall down or can't match the human animal, it's still on the creativity side and the social connection side. Those are our USPs as human beings. And if we focus on those things, if we cultivate them, then we will stand side by side with the machines. And together we will, create a powerful marriage and a powerful union that will drive the economy forward and drive companies to, greater and greater heights. If we try and take on the machines on their terms, on the stuff that they do better than us, then it's going to end in tears. And I'm a natural optimist. I love the technology and I welcome the AI. I welcome these things. It's going to mean some deep tectonic changes in how we organize the workplace, how we think about labor and jobs and so on. But there is that big ace up the sleeve that we have as human beings, and that is the creative power and the social acumen. And let's face it, both of those things rely on slowness. You cannot speed up human relations. You can't make somebody fall in love with you faster because you want to get married in June, right? Or you cannot forge team spirit more quickly by downloading an app from Amazon, right? These things have a natural rhythm and they take time to build up trust. These are another, you cannot build trust just by pushing a button or swiping a screen. These have universal time frames or schedules or arcs, and they're slow. But if we allow ourselves to take the time to do them slowly, we will get so much more out of them. So it comes back to this idea that I always return to, this idea of that balance between fast and slow. So in this case, it's the machines that do the fast stuff and the humans that do the slow stuff. And it's in that balance, it's in that dance between fast and slow. That's where the magic and the music happens.
Okay, so let's talk about balance then a little bit more. So what are your rituals, your slow rituals for slowing down? You mentioned Reiki and meditation. Are these things that you practice, or do you have other things that you do?
Not Reiki, but I do meditation. I do use mindfulness. And again, I'm not a a Buddhist monk, I don't sit for hours on end in the lotus position. I'll often just carve out a few minutes during the day if things start to feel like they're becoming too fast for me or spinning out of my control, and I can tell in my body that I'm not concentrating anymore. I will just maybe take 5 minutes or 10 minutes and just sit quietly, breathing and doing some breathing exercises. I'm very careful now with my technology. I used to be somebody who pretty much slept with my iPhone. Now my two favorite words are airplane mode, right? I'm always reachable, but on my terms. And I've also switched off all my notifications so that I am not interrupted by messages and incoming information when it suits the people sending that to me. I'm only interrupted when I'm ready to be interrupted. So if I'm ready to look at my phone, I pick it up and I look and see if there's an email. And I haven't missed an important message yet, touch wood, yet. If you need to be instantly contactable sometimes, then of course you switch on the notifications. But it's about finding that right recipe, that balance in the moment. One other thing I do that I find really slows me down is I've kind of taken up sketching. Now at school, I was dreadful. In fact, I'm still not very good. I wouldn't want to even show you one of my drawings now, but it's the act of sketching that just forces you to slow down, to stop, do what we very seldom do nowadays, which is to stop and look very hard at something for a long time. Look away, try and render it in lines on a piece of paper. And something in that discipline is very Zen. And it almost, for me, acts like a vaccine. It inoculates me against the virus of hurry, right? It's my way of saying, okay, things are spinning out. I'm just going to sit down and look at something. And I find that it spills out of the moment of sketching and colors the rest of my life. So I feel that since taking up sketching and meditation and so on, I'm just generally more present. If I'm in a business meeting or even just watching something on Netflix, I'm there 100%. I'm soaking it up. I'm completely in the moment. I'm not juggling 4 things or wondering what's next on my to-do list or trying to see if that's my phone vibrating in my pocket. I'm there 100%. And in a sense, that's a way of thinking about slow, that slow is about being there and in the moment 100%. So that even when you're doing something fast on the inside, you're calm, you're focused, you're concentrated, you're still, you're slow. And again, brings us back to that beautiful interplay, that dance between fast and slow.
I love that you call it a fast virus. In fact, we can all catch that, can't we? That's great. I'm thinking that this message of slow would have a huge impact on well-being and mental health in the workplace, which is a huge concern. And I think it's a really, and slow rituals and incorporating into work. So I love that. I think this is a really, really good, a good message. But let's move on to your speaking then at events. Is that one of the big takeaways that people come away with?
It is, and I found that myself, that by slowing down, by reconnecting with my inner tortoise, I'm just healthier, right? I'm not exhausted from running and juggling all the time. This is one of the ironies now. We're so, because the taboo against slowness runs so deep in our culture that we just associate slow with bad things, with laziness, with being stupid, torpid, unproductive, unhappy, a couch potato, right? But in fact, if you slow down right, it's the opposite of that. It's electrifying. It's invigorating. It unleashes all of the power that you have within you because you're not burned out from going fast all the time. It's that gear shift, right? Sure, sometimes if I've got to go fast, I can go as fast as anyone needs me to go. But the reason I'm able to do that and enjoy those fast moments is that I have slower ones as well. So sometimes I will do nothing at all or just go very slowly through a moment of the day. But when it's time to go into turbo mode, I'm there and I can do it. And I think well-being is the core of that. If you talk to companies, and I do it all the time, and I hear from human resource people, one of the things they complain most about or they're worried most about is that their staff are just moving so fast that they're racing through their lives instead of living them, and that this is taking a serious toll on their mental health, their physical health, just their well-being across the board. And a big, big draw for them is the idea that slowing down is the key to unlock better well-being, but at the same time brings greater productivity, more creativity. It's good for the bottom line. So it's a win-win. That's the joy of slow. Ultimately, it's not about turning everybody into a couch potato or a slacker. It's about helping people be the best version of themselves, whether at home or the workplace. And that's that's a message that resonates across companies from all sectors.
Great. And we touched on what I want to talk about next a bit earlier when you were saying, the benefits to businesses, and you've mentioned it again here, and also, how you convince your boss that you should be changing and becoming slower. But what happens then if you go and speak to an organization and you speak to their audience and they come away inspired to slow down because it is going to improve all of these things that you mentioned? What has to happen back when they're back in their jobs that continues that allows them to continue the good new things, the new way of thinking, the new way of acting? How does that get embedded in the company so it keeps going?
I think there are two keys to embedding it. One is having buy-in up the chain, right? You need people above you to be sympathetic to the idea of slowing down in the way we're talking about here, good slow, right? Not bad slow. If you don't have that, it becomes very difficult for people down the food chain to put on the brakes because they're afraid. And because of this taboo against slow, it means that even when we can feel in our bones, it would be good for us to put on the brakes, and we're yearning to slow down, to be a better employee. We're too afraid to do it if the boss or the person sitting in the corner office is not on board. And so it's always crucial, I see in companies that don't do that the message can land further down the hierarchy, but then will just dissipate if you don't have buy-in higher up the chain. That seems to me, but that's not just for slowing down a company, that's for any kind of corporate change or cultural shift. You need people up higher up the tree to be on board. So that would be a first suggestion. The second is that when people slow down, again, like with any kind of cultural change in a company, it's very difficult to do it in an atomized, lonely way. You need to do it together. So to create little groups, support groups, or maybe a chat room or a WhatsApp group where people can swap ideas and talk about how they slowed down and how it worked or maybe didn't work and how they're tweaking it and changing it and modifying it. And just so that you know that you're not alone. Because that's really the most frightening thing, I think, for people, is feeling that they are the only one stepping off this high-speed treadmill. And that's a terrifying prospect. It keeps us on that high-speed treadmill often until we crash into a wall and have a burnout, right? Or leave the company or the industry because we just cannot take it anymore. And one of the big benefits of slow is that it's an intervention before you get to that extreme end of the line scenario. It allows people to say, okay, I don't feel good now. I'm not delivering the best work I could because I'm too rushed. I'm too distracted. I'm overstimulated. I never have a chance to take a deep breath and slow down. But I'm too scared to question that model. Well, what slow does, if you come in at the right moment with the buy-in from high up the chain, is you give people the permission and the freedom and the courage to say, you know what, there is another way here. And let's find out together, not alone, because alone will very rarely work. Let's find out together what the right recipe for slow is for our company. It reminds me of an old African proverb, which is, if you want to go far, go alone. Sorry.
Fast.
I always get my African. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's something, again, it comes back to what we were talking about, machines versus human beings. Machines are solitary, right? For the most part. Human beings are social. We're social animals. We thrive on and we find our best selves, our better angels, when we move forward together. And again, to be together, you need to slow down. You need to have that social connection, that social glue, that trust, that confidence, that openness. And again, all of those things only ever blossom in the workplace or anywhere else when we slow down and we have time to be with each other, to listen, to be heard, to be together sometimes in companionable silence, right? As families often do, and just allow those human relations to flourish.
Do you know, that's a wonderful message, actually, because this is the last episode before we go into Christmas. So I think it's a wonderful thing to say, be together, slow down as a family. And I think that's a nice festive message to leave on, isn't it? Don't you think?
It is. Let's all have a slow Christmas, right? Let's keep the good side of Christmas, which is the togetherness, the being in the same place. We know that can lead to sparks, but that's life, right? The rough and the smooth. Let's enjoy the smooth by slowing down, and maybe let's also embrace, in order to have a slow Christmas, one of the tenets of the slow movement, which is that less is more. So if you're thinking about all of those social engagements that come at us like a blizzard this time of year, maybe sit down and say, rather than saying yes to everything, maybe say no to the odd thing. You know, explain why. Explain because you're trying to slow things down and not go get so frantic. Why don't we meet in January instead of everybody crushing everything into that December, rush at the end of the year? And just allow yourself to have a bit more time for the things that really matter to you in the Christmas season, so that you get more out of it. As I said earlier, my first book is in praise of slow. I often think of the flip side of that as in praise of no. That a big part of slowing down is relearning the lost art of just saying no, of understanding that less is more, of prioritizing, of delegating, and so on. There's a great quote from Warren Buffett, the legendary investor, who said once that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything, right? Now, he's talking about the workplace, but you could even apply that to Christmas, right, as well. It's that idea of slow no. It works right through every single dimension of our lives. That's the simple beauty of it.
Well, Carl, thank you for that. Thank you for all of those wonderful tips. And let's hope that everyone has a slow Christmas.
Let's do just that. Thank you.